Today on the Playbook podcast, I spoke exclusively to House Speaker Mike Johnson on the campaign trail in Arizona, and he paints an optimistic picture for his party in November. But I pressed him on the headwinds facing Republicans heading into the fall, especially over the war in Iran. That's the story driving the day.
We'll also get to the other big stories driving the conversation in Washington, including much more from Dasha's interview with Johnson, an update on Max Miller, and a MAGA burrito debate.
And Thanksgiving in August, anyone? We'll end with the answer from one Wisconsin DSA candidate that has everyone talking turkey. Good morning, Playbookers. I'm Dasha Burns.
And I'm Megan Messerly. It's Thursday, August 6th.
All right, Megan, so much to talk about. Let's just dig right into it because I am still here in very hot Arizona. After sitting down with Mike Johnson, I also have been following him on the campaign trail here. He's been stumping for candidates in two really critical districts here in Arizona. That full interview is available on the Conversation podcast. That's out this morning. But I want to talk about it a little bit here because it really digs into and ties into so many of the conversations we've been having throughout the week, throughout the months, really the midterm year here, because we talked a lot.
Forever.
It feels like forever, and I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. We talked a lot about the midterms, and we kept circling around this midterm strategy and the very optimistic pitch that Mike Johnson is giving to me, to reporters, to voters, and to campaigns themselves. Listen.
We passed over 750 pieces of legislation through the House. We've codified like 125 executive orders of the president. We clawed back spending. We're saving fraud, waste, and abuse dollars. And we passed the big, beautiful bill, the Working Families Tax Cut. No tax on tips and overtime, Social Security, pro-business, pro-growth policies to help small business owners create more jobs. We restored peace through strength. We closed the border, secured the border.
He was kind of relentlessly optimistic throughout my conversation with him about what Republicans' outlook is, which is in pretty stark contrast, Megan, I know, with what both you and I have been hearing from Republican operatives behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it has not been good the last few months. I mean, this is not the position that Republicans want to be in. They're on the back foot here. But listening to that clip, I mean, this is exactly the kinds of things that the president was talking about in Vegas yesterday, just one state over from where you are, doing the thing that Republicans really wanted him to be doing all along, right? Hitting the campaign trail, talking about these economic wins, talking about the one big beautiful bill, talking about the tax cuts, which of course, no taxes on tips originated in Las Vegas. He really showed up. He, brought Nevada Governor Joe Lombardo on stage, who is in a tight re-election contest. Like, these are all sort of the positive things. And I think what Republicans thought they would be doing, and that very much meshes with what Johnson laid out for you there. But this has not been the reality, really, of what Republicans have been dealing with.
There is one big problem with all of this, which is, yes, there are credible arguments to make especially when you're talking about the map, right? And all of the redistricting that has happened and the way that the map is favoring Republicans. They have stuff to say about the big, beautiful bill. However, we are at war with Iran. And yes, gas prices are over $4. And this war is hugely unpopular. And affordability is a huge problem for voters. And there's a ton of frustration about the amount of energy and effort that the administration is spending on these overseas concerns when people are feeling the pinch here at home. And I pressed Johnson about this. Here's what he had to say.
In the first quarter, the economy was beginning to take off like a rocket, and then we got into this skirmish with Iran. Okay, so clearly that's a—
You're calling it a skirmish.
War, whatever you want to call it. It's a serious situation. I think we're getting close to resolution as we sit here today. There's big developments.
So he calls it a skirmish. I pushed back on that. He called it a skirmish again, by the way, when I was listening to him talk to some voters yesterday. He's campaigning as though the expectations that he had for 2026 in 2025 are still the reality without this X factor that's, a pretty big X factor.
Yeah. I mean, look, I talked to Republicans in D.C., around the country, And I think you just hear it. People are tired of talking about the war. They want a way out. I mean, you can even hear this sometimes when the president himself talks about the war. Like, it is really just this quagmire with no way out. And so a lot of folks are really just waiting for the war to end. And short of that, like, there's not much they can do to message on it. This ultimately is in the hands of the president. The president this week, of course, suggested repeatedly that a new deal with Iran is on the horizon. Of course, he has also, again, insisted that this is Iran's last chance to do so. We've heard that one a few times before. But there's really nothing Republicans can do other than, really hope that this wraps up. And, the Republicans I talked to, I think they really want to believe that this time when the president says a deal is on the horizon, that he really means it. I was talking with Nevada Republican Chairman Michael McDonald yesterday ahead of the president's rally in Las Vegas, and he acknowledged like gas prices are up, they're high. And he said campaigns are getting a little bit antsy about it, even as he voiced sort of the optimism that we routinely hear from the president that, the war will end, prices will go back down, that kind of thing. But in the meantime, campaigns are really worried. And the big thing that I hear is just the disillusionment with the Republican base. Some of the folks I talked to are kind of like, it's kind of too late for the swing voters. Like the economy, things are hard. That sentiment is kind of baked in. But if you end the war, that can really help with Republican turnout and really close this enthusiasm gap with Democrats.
Well, and that is the wishful thinking from Mike Johnson that may or may not come to fruition. You heard him say there that he thinks that a resolution is on the horizon. He's been talking to the president. As we know, the president does call Mike Johnson like several times a day, sometimes several times in the middle of the night. And he is really doing everything in his power. Look, you can see this tension between what he can control and what he can't. Like, he cannot control the president's foreign policy. And so he is doing all he can with what is under his control, which is, some of the messaging around this, which is showing up. I mean, he is like on a crazy campaign trail tour right now, sort of working himself to the bone out here in every competitive district in the country. And he's, managing a very narrow and not entirely united majority in the House on top of all of that. And so, I don't think he has any shortage of tall orders for the rest of the year here. And that's why I think you see this relentless optimism is like his really only option right now. He called himself the ambassador of hope at one of the events that I went to. And you can really see him like wearing that hat hard right now.
Yeah, I was thinking it strikes me very like, if folks know like the serenity prayer, you got to like accept the things you can't change and have the wisdom to know the difference, right? Like this is the space that Johnson is in right now, right? Like he's controlling what he can control.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right, now let's get into Talk of the Town. And we have a lot to cover. So to help us break it all down, we have Mike DeBonis, who is a senior congressional editor here at Politico. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, Dasha. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to get your take on this particular part of my interview with Mike Johnson, because this relationship between Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune has been like fascinating to me. And he had some interesting insight into him, into Thune, into like their very different relationships with President Trump. Take a listen and I'll get your take on the other side. Do you tell him no? Because Thune has had to do that publicly a lot more.
Yeah, I do it privately. That's the whole point. I roll my eyes at these ridiculous headlines.
Well, can you tell me, like, when's the time you've told him no, or you've walked him off the ledge or something? I know these are private conversations, but is there an example?
I talk to the president 4 times a day.
Okay.
He's an ideas guy, as you know, and he's constantly pitching, discussing, taking ideas, processing them, coming up with ideas of his own.
Do you ever say, Mr. President, that's a crazy idea, don't do that?
Yes, we have a very close relationship, and I talk him out of it. But look, every president, every commander-in-chief needs people around him who will say what he needs to hear, not just what he wants to hear. And I'm that guy. And so there's many times when we disagree.
You're that guy.
Yes, I say. But we're in the same party. The voters delivered to us, again, unified government. They expect us to work as a well-oiled machine because we have so much to fix. I don't air grievances with the president in public. I do it behind closed door. I think that's the most efficient and effective way to do it.
Okay, Mike, what did you make of that, knowing what you know about the current dynamics between the House, the Senate, and the White House.
Yeah, one thing that really struck me when I heard this the first time was how he talks about how they just have different relationships with the president, different styles of things, and how he's had this long relationship with Trump. And, John Thune's been in Republican politics for his entire life. Like, he is a 60-year-old man. He was a Hill staffer. He's been in Congress for more than 30 years. And the idea that Mike Johnson, who's been in Congress for less than a decade, has this much deeper relationship with Trump is both true, but also kind of like illustrative of the divide that exists between establishment Republicans like John Thune and Donald Trump. And so, I mean, he set up the situation pretty well. Like, John Thune is a guy who's, very much of the traditional Republican mindset of the pre-Trump era. And he was elected by a lot of senators who were also of that milieu. And so he didn't have to develop a relationship with Trump really in the first term. Certainly did not stick his neck out on his behalf in 2016. Said some pretty critical things during in the aftermath of the 2020 election, which caused him a lot of problems. And they had to go through this process as Trump became the nominee in 24, and as Thune was trying to climb the ranks and become the leader, of sort of reconciling and figuring out how they were going to get along. And it worked pretty well for a while, but then it didn't. Mike Johnson, on the other hand, he has been a creature of Trump all along and has never pretended otherwise. Like, he is like, I am the supporting cast. I am not in any way my own political entity. I am subservient to this person. And that is actually what's made him a successful speaker and allowed him to notch the wins that he's been able to notch. It's because he has the sort of, there's the assumption that Donald Trump is going to have his back, and he has had his back.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's both his greatest asset as speaker and also the thing that he gets the most criticism for. You've ceded all power to the president, blah, blah, blah. And it has resulted in, like, the very different public conversations about Johnson versus Thune, right? Like, the criticism from Johnson is coming from the sort of non-MAGA world, more traditional Republicans saying, like, why are you saying yes to Trump on everything? Whereas Thune has had to publicly say no to Trump, in part because there's just some, like, literal, like, it's like the physics of the Senate, right? Like, there are some things that are just not going to work no matter, how hard Trump pushes for it. But the criticism from Thune is mostly coming from Trump and his base, because Thune has to say no, and Johnson doesn't say no, at least not publicly. And, he gets into that. He says behind the scenes, he's doing a lot more of talking the president in and out of things than he might let on publicly. But it's a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah, they have the two of them have different jobs. And, you ask John Thune the same questions you ask Mike Johnson, he'd give you a similar answer. They are both sort of elected by their own conferences. Senators are just a different breed of cat. They get elected once every 6 years. They feel more independent of the political moment sometimes. A lot of them feel that they have their own political identities to uphold. And, Mike Johnson deals with a small handful of people like that, but they are a small handful, and they have gotten smaller. It's been a smaller and smaller handful over time. It is telling that the people who give him the most trouble aren't necessarily people who are like MAGA. It's people who are more ideological, who have sort of very firm libertarian small government views, or otherwise feel strongly from a ideological perspective about things. And that's when they basically have to bring in Trump to be the heavy and say, hey, buddy, like, no one elected you to be ideological. They elected me to get this agenda done, and you need to be on board because you're a Republican.
Like, one other challenge that Johnson has been contending with is some of the embattled members of the House. Let's just get an update on the Max Miller of it all, and where does that stand at the moment?
I mean, it's Thursday. I believe there's 1 or 2 more days that he potentially could drop off the ballot and give Republican campaign operatives reason to rejoice. But there just seems like there's no way that's happening. As recently as Wednesday night, he was tweeting, attacking Bernie Moreno, his ex-father-in-law, and, basically making clear that he was going to, for lack of a better term, Trump it out.
It's funny because a lot of Republicans that I've talked to about this have pointed out, especially, folks that advise candidates and campaigns have said that since the Trump era, time and again, candidates think that they can be Trump 2.0, 3.0, whatever. They can do what Trump did. And the reality is nobody is Donald Trump. And the amount of times that operatives try to instill that in candidates and fail to do so is we just keep seeing that over and over. I do want to move us on to another debate playing out in the MAGA universe right now. Guys, we got to talk about burritos. Which is not a political connection I thought that I was going to make.
Finally, something I have some experience with. All right. All right.
Oh, Mike, I knew you'd love this one. Megan, you lived in Nevada. You're a burrito gal.
Yeah.
My husband and I always debate tacos versus burritos, but the debate goes so much deeper than that in the MAGA universe right now. For the uninitiated, basically what started as an online debate about affordability resulted in some bizarre back and forth about whether college kids can afford burritos. And then Mark Thiessen got involved, who has been one of the Republicans that has been most hawkish on Iran and talking to Trump and pushing folks in Trump's world to sort of, he's of the finish the job, go hard on Iran crowd. He got involved saying that college kids already have burritos in their meal plans, suggesting that they shouldn't be worrying about buying burritos. And then the vice president, who, as we know, lives on the internet, comes in with a dig saying that it's quite obvious that Thiessen has never missed a burrito. I think we all know what he was trying to say there. So, guys, let's get esoteric. Let's get philosophical about the burrito debate. What does this say about the GOP right now, Megan?
Oh my gosh, I am obsessed with this Twitter debate. I was following it all day yesterday. I was talking to sources on the phone about it.
The most serious calls of your journalistic career.
I have a question for you about burritos. No, but I'm gonna go from burrito to something else, which is this is nothing short of a battle for the future of the Republican Party. Is what this comes down to. Yeah, from burrito
Fighting
to
words, Megan Messerly.
So, I mean, what this ultimately comes down to is there is this raging debate inside the Republican Party right now over what its future economic platform is going to be, especially headed into 2028. There's been another debate raging on conservative Twitter this week and in recent weeks, where prominent Republicans have really been sort of honestly at each other's throats over this idea of, quote, common good conservatism, which really speaks to this idea that there are policies that government should implement that benefit the common good. So one example might be policies to incentivize family creation. So this is a deviation from sort of the old free market, capitalism, libertarian philosophy, stay out of my business. The government is there to just keep the lights on, but, not tip the scales any direction. And that is fundamentally not what the next generation of Republican leaders believe, J.D. Vance among them. He often says that GDP should not be the measure of human flourishing, that dignity should be, right? It's this idea that there is a role for the government in shaping day-to-day life. And the debate on the right is to what extent is that actually okay? But the thing I keep hearing from sources is, we're seeing this conversation on the left right now, the insurgent left, these policies that really speak to some of the frustration that Americans are feeling about their pocketbooks, about the cost of living. And Republicans are saying, we need to have an answer to that as well. One Republican put it to me this way this week. They said, quote, conservatives can move to the left on economics, but the Democrats can't move to the right on anything. So conservatives feel like they have a space here to really match Democrats when it comes to economic policies, but from sort of the perspective that they believe. This is, in many cases, it's very faith-based or grounded in sort of these family principles as as opposed to what we see on the left. But it really is this like new way of thinking, and it's very uncomfortable to a lot of the old guard Republican Party.
Yeah, I mean, Megan, I told you to get philosophical about burritos, and you really took the assignment seriously. There is also the Mark Thiessen versus J.D. Vance on the foreign policy of it all. Of course, these two are sort of on opposite ends of the spectrum, and to see that tension and that fight between these two characters like come out into the open over burritos also set off a lot of conversation inside of Washington. Mike?
Yeah, I mean, from the congressional perspective, I mean, let's be very literal about burritos and about what this debate was actually about, which is food prices. Like, from the Hill perspective, there is nothing happening on affordability on Capitol Hill right now. And that is kind of was my takeaway from all this. Like, they're talking about what can Republicans be doing more on affordability. And, you know, the fact of the matter is we're 3 months out from the midterms. They're not doing anything. The Senate is talking about...
They're out here talking about, I mean, it's interesting because in Arizona, they've been here, a couple of events that I went to, they're talking about what happened last year.
With the tax cuts, sure.
With the tax cuts, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a weird position where they're trying to sell an extension of tax cuts. You know, some people are getting the no tax on tips now. Some people are getting no tax on Social Security and overtime. That is new. That said, the biggest, dollar amount of the tax cuts was just extending what had already been done back in Trump's first term. So, you tell people, oh, well, we kept you from getting a tax hike. Like, we say, okay, gee, thanks. But in terms of prices, like that is something people see every day. They complain about, they get a paycheck once every 2 weeks. And like, did they really notice that their withholding went up or down? Maybe like once a year, you get your tax return. But, you're in the grocery store 2, 3, 4 times a week, and you are buying tortillas and you're buying those refried beans, and it's not 79 cents anymore. It's $1.79 or more than that. And, Republicans are talking about, sending money to the Pentagon. They're talking about maybe some aid for farmers, but they're not talking about things that would have any direct impact on the prices people are paying. And so that is kind of, there's a disconnect between what the debate is inside the party and what the agenda is on Capitol Hill and, frankly, in the White House. It's not, the White House, Donald Trump likes to say, well, prices are coming down, completely disconnected from what the data is saying and just trying to wish it into reality. And I guess we'll see in November how that's going to go for him.
Mike DeBonis, go get yourself a bean and cheese burrito. I know you want to. Get out of here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tasha.
All right, Megan, before I let you go, I got to know, what is your favorite holiday?
Oh my God, Dasha, it is Christmas. Obviously, it's Christmas. I love the time of year. I love it being cold and cozy. I love all the Christmas drinks. And I put my tree up on November 1st, which some people will say is way too early, but I am obsessed.
Okay, I get a real tree. So, like, I've learned if I put it up too early, then it's, like, dead and craggly by the end, even if I water it. But I am obsessed with Christmas also. And I have, like, forced my husband to put up with an absurd amount of Christmas decor, and like it's still not enough. Like every year I add like pounds and pounds and boxes to the collection. And I don't think either of us are canceling Christmas, right? I say this because our colleague Irie Sentner had an interview with Francesca Hong, who is running for the Democratic nomination for governor in Wisconsin, and she has stirred some controversy over the canceling or not canceling of Thanksgiving, and she gave him a very interesting answer to that exact question that I asked you, Megan. What is your favorite holiday? Take a listen.
My favorite holiday is Thanksgiving. Because I
There
love
you have it.
Yep. I don't want to cancel it. I actually love it. We bring, actually, it's kind of in-laws and family members and their in-laws, and it's a big event. And, I'm going to be real. I'm kind of a curmudgeon when it comes to holidays in general. So But right now, what we want to get serious about is making sure that we deliver a Democratic trifecta for the majority, for Democrats. And it's exciting to see more and more people join our movement, get engaged, get organized, and get to work to make sure that we have Democrats in the majority in the legislature and the executive this year.
Okay, you heard it there. Our favorite holiday is, in fact, Thanksgiving.
It was not the answer that I was expecting. Really felt like an effort to backtrack there, Dasha.
This whole thing has honestly left me pretty speechless. But yeah, not the answer I was expecting at all.
No. And there will be more to watch in this race. I mean, we should note that Senator Bernie Sanders has said he doesn't plan on endorsing in the Wisconsin race. So this is going to be a race to watch, even apart from the holiday-related debates and merriment.
All right, guys, that is all for today's show.